thank you for joining us. I'm here with Kyle Arlington, the superintendent of schools from Kenilworth, and the business administrator, Vincent Ganella. Thank you for joining us in these lovely post-pandemic times of COVID. We're here to talk about part 2 is our schools post-COVID, looking at the education and administration of what everybody's dealing with. So Kyle, I don't know if you want to start on the educational aspect of it, because you've had your students in your buildings from day one. So how has coming back to your 2021 school year looked differently this year?
Yeah, so thanks, Tammy. We spent all summer really worrying about the health and wellness protocols that our students and our teachers would need to embrace. And of course, we had some conversations about instruction, but because the guidance was kind of ever evolving by the governor and the state, our focus really was on making sure kids were healthy and well, and our faculty too, when they were in the building. So when September came and we realized our health and wellness protocols were really on point and working effectively, we pretty soon realized that it was equally important for us to have had those instructional conversations too, because the biggest adjustments as far as teaching and learning goes is like what instruction looks like at the classroom level. So we're really relying heavily on technology to help students collaborate and embrace more future-ready practices. But just generally, instruction looks different. Kids aren't able to pair share. They're not able to actively engage. We had just spent a lot of time and energy building infrastructurally and also capacity for like a makerspace. And all that had to be halted, at least for the year, since we couldn't share those materials. So like math instruction looks different, right? How do you teach little guys number sense when you can't maybe readily use manipulatives as much as you have in the past? So now we're kind of tweaking our health and wellness protocols, but really diving deeper into all of the instructional shifts we have to make as a result of things like social distancing and not being able to share materials. So all that matters, and it's part of this like bigger ongoing conversation we're having.
Okay, and I know some of our earlier conversations, your incentives, as you were saying, you pushed for maker spaces that you weren't able to use. We're looking at a one-to-one, that was a little, you had to accelerate that incentive due to this onset. And you're in a hybrid model?
We are. So our K-6 students come back actually every day for a modified day. So we're able to get them all in the building based on the number of students who opted for virtual instruction, and also by really maximizing the personnel we have. So repurposing like interventionists and basic skills teachers to be classroom teachers. And then in grades 7 to 12, we do have a hybrid model, kind of like an A day, B day situation, for which we're heavily relying on technology. So pre-pandemic, we were gearing up for a one-to-one rollout in grades 7, 12. So we were kind of on the right track there. We're grateful we were. And then we quickly realized that even in preschool, right, we had to make sure each student was assigned a device. And so that looks different across those grade levels. But in the event we need to pivot to all distance learning as it relates to technology, I think we're pretty well prepared.
What's the biggest struggle you're hearing from your teachers as to this change in the pedagogy?
Yeah, so one is student engagement. It's really hard to engage kids over Zoom. So our teachers are making yeoman's efforts. They're taking instructional risks, but at the end of the day, that kind of like face-to-face intimate relationship between teacher and student just looks and sounds totally different right now. And we've also spent a lot of time through the auspices of like student personnel services, faculty, trying to really promote and embrace social emotional learning, realizing that kids need community now more than ever, and it's kind of hard to build that community in your classrooms. Our teachers are doing a great job, but when your kindergarten teacher is wearing a mask all day, It's quite a different experience being welcomed to school this year than it has any other year. So I would say engagement, community building, those are big challenges. And then just rethinking lots of kind of traditional things like what does assessment look like, right? Everything looks like online now, and teachers are really diving in quickly to a host, like a bevy of new instructional technology tools that they've never used before because they have to now.
Okay. Vince, I know facilities operations and the financial end of things, the school buildings were probably the cleanest places you could be come the end of March after everybody was removed from the school buildings. And we didn't know when we were going to get back in the building. So everybody prepared, and I know you had your facilities guys out there. But financially is not always the most evident to the public. What have you struggled with differently since March that wasn't in your budget that you've had to manage and work with?
Well, one of the biggest obstacles, we didn't know how much money was actually going to be available now. So in March and April, we were taking some very aggressive steps to upgrade certain systems, and with the anticipation that we were going to be back in May. We didn't think we were going to be out the whole year. So a lot of those initial purchases that we made last year, whether it be disinfecting equipment or other types of equipment, we did in March, which was a good thing because most of those things actually never wound up coming until the summer because of the time delay. So regarding the financial side of it, there has been a lot of emphasis, I have to say, from whether it be the state, the federal level, or even the county level. We've gotten multiple grants from the county now. We've gotten multiple grants from the state, and on the federal level, there was FEMA. So we tried to maximize our dollars effectively that way. So early on in April, I started a spreadsheet, which business managers like spreadsheets, of just COVID POs. And so we were able to list all the POs that we've put associated, whether it would be PPE, HVAC equipment, even personnel items, and be able to track what we were spending. And that was very helpful for us because a lot of these grants came out after the fact and could be retroactive. So, and certain grants were for certain things and other grants were for other things. The FEMA grant was a little more restrictive on PPEs and things like that and infrastructure changes, but it did allow us to do certain things with that. So I might use the funds for FEMA under one and the Union County CARES grant for something else, or now the newest one was the New Jersey COVID relief funds for something else. So ultimately, we were able to do what we needed to do without really affecting our bottom line. So it's been a pleasant surprise from that perspective.
With the regulations, what other things did you have to take on? I know we talked about your meal program and some things that you didn't necessarily have to do in the past that you do have to do now.
Yeah, we're as part of the National Lunch Program, we have to provide lunches to free and reduced students, which we were doing last spring as well. The students would, when the students were at home, they would come to the building, pick up the meals, and then go back home. But we're back in session. So it made it very interesting that now these kids are going to be in the building. They're not eating lunch in the building, but we have to provide them their breakfast and lunches. So as a result of the Summer Seamless program that the state put out through the waiver, every child under the age of 18 is eligible for a free meal. So our participation has gone up tremendously. So it's not as much as, which was the same case in the spring where everyone was eligible, but the students actually had to make an effort, or the parents had to make an effort to leave their houses, go to the school, get the meals. Now it's basically we deliver the meals to the kids' classrooms on their way out the building. And just recently, I think it was last weekend, they started the rollout of the providing meals over the weekends as well. So the Columbus Day weekend, we had to provide breakfast and lunch for kids on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. So we pumped out thousands of meals in one day, and these kids carried these meals home. So it was a very different structure. So by far, we're going to outproduce our meal quotas for years to come. I don't think we'll ever get to these levels again. So that's been one piece of the challenge.
And to the extent that you've never had to do that before for that number of students or that many of days in one output.
Correct. I mean, a normal Friday would be in the elementary school 300 meals, and now I think last weekend they pumped out over 1,600 meals, in one day. So it's a big difference. So yeah.
So you're 2 full months into in-person schooling. Looking back on those 2 months, what would you do differently? Because you're talking to potentially a lot of districts that are just starting to bring their students back. Some are looking the end of October, some are looking after teachers convention. What would you do differently from what you've experienced?
Yeah, so it kind of circles back to something I said earlier, Tammy. Like, we spent maybe so much time focused on buildings and grounds matters and safety protocols, and then working through the committee structure with teachers and stakeholders and trying to answer tons of these like what if questions. Like, what are we going to do when a kid takes a mask off? What are we going to do when it doesn't come with his health form attestation? And what was super interesting has been all those things that we thought were going to be problems actually weren't. Like, we haven't had any student mask issues. No one's really forgetting to sign the daily forms. We probably should have spent more time, from my vantage point, really digging in to the like curricular and instructional pieces that coming back to school necessitate. So like, we should have been having earlier conversations around adjusting assessments and looking at things like power standards. And now that kids are not going to be in school all day, what are the instructional non-negotiables, right, that we want teachers to carry into the classrooms? What can go? Like, what does a morning meeting look like now? So kind of all those classroom level instructional concerns, again, we did talk about, but looking back now, we probably should have talked about more robustly, because teachers are figuring that out on the fly. And while that was always going to happen, probably more front loading would have made for a smoother instructional start to September. Does that make sense?
Definitely.
Yeah.
How about on the financial administration?
Well, I also take care of some of the IT needs. I think on the IT needs, had I known, I probably would have ordered when I had the opportunity to order. I put that. We went with that one-on-one initiative, as I said, and we said in the high school, in the middle school. I probably would have tacked on another 500 Chromebooks just for the heck of it, because the Chromebooks are very hard to find right now. And we got them within, when I put that order in I think it was April, I got them in a couple of weeks at that point. And I don't think anyone had the anticipation that was going. So those 850 we got were great. Also, from a technology standpoint, I think probably, and partially education, kind of what Kyle was talking about, had we known the inner workings of probably the whole Zoom world and how that worked, I think it would have been great for us to get some really good intensive PD for our teachers probably in August on exactly how this is, because a lot of those glitches we were working on when we got back in September, and the feedback on the computers, the cameras, all that stuff. So some of those protocols that we worked on very briefly in August would have been great to get actual teacher interaction. And maybe Kyle could talk a little bit about the Zoom challenges and things like that.
Yeah, so like tons of Zoom challenges. Like, we're figuring it out. I think we're in a rhythm right now, but So to Vince's point, ideally we would want to offer PD on these like learning platforms that have never been explored before. However, like I don't think teachers were really there yet, like mentally. They were still conceptualizing and coming to terms with like what it would be like to come to school. So like in that kind of old school Maslow's triangle, like they needed to make sure their health needs were met. They wanted to make sure kids were going to, be social distanced. I'm not sure they were available, if you will, like social emotionally for those things that are really a priority right now,
Yeah.
like how to prevent Zoom bombing. So in that regard, I think we're on the right, followed the right sequence, like make sure all of their physical needs and health needs were met first, and then some of their like teaching and learning needs next. But like we have a tech facilitator who's helping teachers at the classroom level with things like Zoom, and that's been a real blessing. But just like the instructional world looks so different now, teachers are doing a great job, but I don't think we should be underestimating how overwhelming it is to teach right now.
And things were changing so rapidly over the summer during July and August. I wouldn't be surprised if most, I mean, and I don't know how many times Kyle and I had the discussion where we really thought that, well, we're doing this, we're making this effort, but we were almost sure that on September 7th, the governor was going to say, time out, this isn't going to work, no in-person school. And that was, I think, what a lot of teachers probably were thinking too. But we were trying to stay the course and try to get it back where the kids and the staff came back safely. He didn't pull the plug. The governor didn't pull the plug on us. So I think that was another mindset that we had to deal with in August.
So to kind of wrap it up on a positive note, not that normal is going to be what normal was last year, but as we get to a steady pace moving forward, what positive can we take out of the experiences that we've had from both of your perspectives that you want to keep as we move forward? So what COVID initiative that we got forced into do we want to take day to day moving forward for the education and the administration aspect?
So a lot of it is kind of what we touched on already. I think if you haven't seen the worth and value of future ready practices and value added technology to teaching and learning, like you probably never will, right? So continuing to leverage technology to engage kids and to give to them a type of instruction that we couldn't even imagine without technology, like that's a priority that I think COVID highlighted for us, and that will continue. And we had maybe some pockets of personnel who believed in social emotional learning but couldn't really figure out where it fit in, or that it came at the cost of math instruction or ELA instruction. And I think now they really see how critical it is to have SEL as part of their day. So we've done a lot around like psychological first aid for teachers and building resiliency for teachers. And a lot of that is carrying into their classroom instruction. And I think COVID really shone a spotlight on how important that is. And I have a feeling that will continue after COVID too.
Yeah, from an operational standpoint, I think that people now understand the need and the importance of a good custodial operations, the importance of cleaning and disinfecting. It was in the high school newspaper where one student said the good thing about COVID, the school's never been cleaner and there's soap in the bathrooms. So I think people have more of appreciation for that type of thing, which is going to be important when you get the budget season, when you're trying to convince the Board of Education that, maybe we should do these HVAC upgrades or these, the need to buy these type of disinfecting equipment. I don't think that's going away. Just for flu season alone, a lot of these operational changes that we've made are going to be important for just a typical flu season. That in the past we looked at 15% of the staff or the 50% of the staff or students out in the month of January for the flu or the stomach bug was, oh, well, it's just, par for the course. Now we think maybe we have a way of combating that and mitigating that and keeping the kids in school where they need to be.
Yeah, and one last thing is kids really want to be here, Tammy. That's been like the most exciting thing to see. I mean, that's why all of our high school kids, who, sometimes high school kids everywhere get a bad reputation for not being able to follow codes of conduct, but they know if they don't, they could easily be virtually learning, and they don't want that. So it's been a great reminder, I think, to me and to teachers too, that like kids want to be here and they belong in school with their teachers. And that's really helped in the spirit of community building.
Absolutely. I know my daughter doesn't want me to be her teacher. She goes, Mom, go to work. So I want to thank you for being here. I don't know if there's questions, comments that our audience wants to jump in with. Kyle, Vince, thank you for joining us. I appreciate your input, your guidance for those that are going to be facing the same challenges that you've been dealing with, and you've been doing a great job keeping education in person going in Kenilworth for the past few months. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Tammy.
Bye.
Bye.